Okay, so you know, for those of you who are new to this course, for today that would be you, Night Raider. Thank you for joining us today again. Today's topic for my spiritual activism course is going to be spiritual research, personality types, and heroism. Before for this session, we had a bit of a brief discussion on what each of these three topics means for this deeper topic of the week that we're going to be talking about. And so what we, first I talked about like what spiritual research is. To reiterate, spiritual research is modern scientific research into the field of spirituality. So that would be mostly meditation research and its effects on the brain and outcomes of happiness in participants. And the reason why that's important is because of the potential applications for social change and getting people to establish a consensus on what is good and evil in society, right? There a consensus on morality, because scientific research and the use of the scientific method is a way of establishing consensus, right? That's why you have things like peer review, even though there are many flaws to that methodology. If we don't have a consensus of morality, there is no way to agree on social issues like climate change, racism, healthcare, etc. We have in the United States, we have our two-party political system, but as you can see, they rarely ever agree with each other. And when they do, the sad thing is that they often do that to the establishment types, establishment Democrats and Republicans. They often have a hidden agenda to screw the entire populace over, to put it crudely, but, which is why we need that deeper spiritual work in order to, rewire our brains on a very deep subconscious level. And so this is one way in which we build moral consensus. But another way in which we can do that is through the study of personality types. So that's why today we're going to be going into the different, personality typology systems that exist, like, the MBTI system or the Enneagram system. And so, even though we have our different political parties, depending on which country you're in, people may gravitate to either party or, different issues that each party chooses to support based on their personality types. Now, these systems do contradict, some aspects of these systems do contradict scientific research, like, for example, the Big Five personality typology system. Scientists say that that's more accurate than a system like the MBTI, which has 16 different personality types. But today I'll be diving into the MBTI system because that's probably the most popular personality typology system out there. And I'll be talking about, I'll be providing examples of some personality types and how in the MBTI system they have different personality type functions, and I'll talk about how that influences the way we approach social issues and the way we resolve conflicts. And lastly, to tie it all together, we'll be talking about the theme of heroism and how a culture of heroism, like, for example, in the West, we have in the media, we have like superhero movies and TV shows are all the more popular these days, right? And that's because, people want a moral ideal, to stand behind by, and, when they face the day-to-day stresses of life, when they come, face to face with these issues, and then they feel that they're oppressed, depending on whatever whatever group they're a part of. They need something that transcends this landscape of social issues. It's a common ideal for them to stand behind by. And I'll talk about how spirituality and the idea of superheroes, spiritual activism, is kind of the highest expression of that. And I'll talk about some quote unquote like real life superhero movements that exist today. All right, so the first thing we'll be talking about is a study. It's a study conducted by a Harvard neuroscientist. His name is Dr. Jeffery A. Martin, and he talks about 4 different levels of consciousness and how each progressive stage changes our baseline mood and how that affects our perception of the world. So can you guys see this presentation here?
Yes.
Okay, so here the first thing he does is he categorizes these different psychological changes into different various components. And so the first component that he analyzes is our sense of self. And how does that change, right? So what he says is that in our normal state of consciousness, which you can say is very neurotic, even though we may have moments of happiness and serenity, it's very rare. Oftentimes we're stressed about so many things in life. And that's because we have a very strong sense of self. And, in spirituality, in the study of spirituality, we can say that like our sense of self, or more specifically, the self that is caught up in trying to control external things, or identifying with these thoughts, or identifying with various like fluctuating emotional states that are not who we truly are. It's a sense of false identity. And the stronger that sense of false identity is, the more we're stuck in our normal state of consciousness, our ego. But then Dr. Martin says that, through these different states of consciousness, which his participants arrive to through meditation, that self becomes more expansive. You may report things like feeling like you fill up the entire room, or you feel like, there's no separation between you and the world. These are actual tangible physical states that arise, and not just like, philosophical abstractions that you read in like a religious text. Right. And also another thing he found was that as that sense of self expands, there's our emotional baseline also changes. So in our normal state, yes, we do experience like moments of happiness, like we may be listening to our favorite music and be like on an emotional high, but then the moment we don't get that hit of pleasure from external things, we don't get what we want, we sink into like a very depressive like low state of consciousness, right? And so what we can see is that we don't have a calm emotional baseline, but through these altered states, he says that the degree of emotion that we experience becomes less and less, until at the highest stage there's actually not much emotion at all, if any. So the next one is the degree of self thoughts that ties the sense of self. So I won't go into it. Attachment to the thoughts, the degree of attachment, and also something peculiar here to notice is the degree of agency, right? So with this sense of self, a sense of self, implies that we have a sense of free will. We feel like, whenever, for example, we achieve something in life, right? Like, maybe you're in school and like you try hard to get a good grade, and then when you do get a good grade, you feel like, oh, I did this, or you take ownership of it, like that it's out of my own hard work and perseverance, you know, that I got this achievement, not because, you know, oh, like, you know, maybe you're not like in a depressed, you don't experience like psychological disorders like depression or anxiety or whatnot that may affect your performance. And so through our false beliefs, like, you know, we take ownership and we say that this is me, that I'm doing all of this, when in fact, you know, like some scientific studies have now shown that, like, you know, we really don't have as much free will as we think we do. And so what Dr. Martin found was that in these different states of consciousness, our degree of perceived free will, or our experiential free will, becomes less and less. So, you know, these participants may report experiences like, oh, it feels like my body's moving itself, or, you know, I'm just going through the motions and like I'm being held or propelled by a force beyond me. Like I'm not doing all of this. But then rather than being terrified at that feeling, rather than feeling like, oh crap, like I have no control over this, they feel at peace with that. So we can say is that maybe, you know, in the landscape of social issues, rather than trying to control things and change things, maybe if we let go of our control, maybe that is the solution to healing conflict and division in the world. You know, maybe our incessant need for control is what is perpetuating all these ideological and moral differences. Something to think about. So what he found was that there are 4 main different locations. He calls this change in consciousness PNSE, and PNSE stands for persistent non-symbolic experience. So yeah, I think Nate, just a side tangent here, Nate just logged on right now. Yeah, so like to go over today's topic again, for him that just logged on, its topic is spiritual research, personality types, and heroism. So right now I'm just going over the first section of that. And what I talked about earlier with Knight Raider and Theta is how these 3 areas actually tie together into a single vision. And, you know, human ideals is kind of the embodiment of that vision. Okay, so to go back to what I was saying before, you know, what he says that each location has like different like sublocations. So there's a lot of like, there's a lot of gradations in between, you can say. And it, you know, depending on each participant is different, right? So you can move from one point to another based on how much practice you put in, or maybe you're based on your genetics. And even for participants who practice the same method for the same amount of time, each of them may experience very different outcomes. And like by the end of the study, right? Some may be all the way in location 4 or even beyond, and some may be like, you know, still they may arrive at only location 1, which is still pretty good. Oh, mind you, and location 1 is not the normal state of consciousness. If you're in location 1, you've already experienced a higher degree of happiness. So what is location 1? So location 1 in the PNSE continuum is that sense of expanded self. This is what Dr. Martin found. Oh, again, for Nate, he just logged on. This study was conducted by a Harvard neuroscientist named Dr. Jeffery A. Martin. You can check, you know, look up his research online later. He's he's a great innovator in this field of spiritual neuroscience and research. So it's location 1 has an expanded sense of self, and there's much less, there's a lesser degree of self-related thoughts. And there's a lot of emotional distance, but you still feel those emotional highs and lows. But you feel like, the reason why I feel this is so important is because he says is that this is the location where people start to realize, you know what, no matter what happens, sure, I may be happy, I may be sad, but overall things are going to be okay, or things are okay. So there starts to be a trust in a higher power, no matter what happens. Hey, like, hey, I may feel shitty, but I trust is that the dots will all connect together in the end, right? No matter what happens in your life. And so because of those lesser self-related thoughts, you're not stuck in that personal story of I have to do this, or I am I'm a horrible person, or I'm like a very special person that has to do this and that. There's none of that. Well, there's a lesser degree of that. It hasn't completely vanished at this point. But then you shift towards location 2, which is a continuation along that line. Less self-related thoughts. There starts to be a much more magnified degree of peace and a lesser fluctuation in those emotions. And now here's the interesting part. In location 2, rather than having an expanded sense of self, the sense of self that these participants experienced in location 2 is more non-dual. Now, non-duality means not two, right? In Sanskrit, we have the term advaita, which means not two. And so their sense of self would be like, they may report things like, oh, I don't feel a difference between me and the world. Like literally, like for example, you feel like if you sit down and just feel your like feel your consciousness right now, right? Feel like observe your awareness. You may feel like you're looking through a, how do you call it? Like there's a point, there's like a point in which you feel like you're the perceiver, right? It's like you're looking out into the world and you feel like you're still separate. If you sit down and just observe your awareness right now, just take a moment to do that, you may feel that that is the case, right? But in location 2, that little point starts to dissolve. And so there is no boundary between you and the world, right? And what correlates with that is there's a lesser degree of agency. And so it's kind of like a flow state. Like whatever goal you want to achieve, you just automatically get into the right state of the mindset you need to achieve it, rather than agonizing over what should I do or what should I not do. And so when we go into location 3, what he says is that there's only people in location 3 feel like maybe they're united with God, or united with the force of like unconditional universal love. And that's like the classic mystical state that you see in these like religious texts, like the Bible or whatnot, like different mystics, right? And so what he says is that that's caused by only a single inexplicable like positive emotion that's remaining as our baseline. And this is where people may start to report like psychic abilities. And so what they say is that, of course, location 3 is people feel a higher degree of happiness than location 2. And then lastly, in location 4, the sense of agency that they had, the little that they had, disappears entirely. So they have no sense of free will at all. They feel like none of their thoughts, none of their actions, they're not in control of any of it. And a byproduct of that is they don't feel any emotions, and there's zero self-related thoughts. It is very, very hard to imagine from our normal state. They may, experience like sensory perception, like, different stimuli from their environment and their senses, but it doesn't really do much for them. So like, people may, some advanced, like, for example, Buddhist monks, they may practice so hard to get to that point where like they don't feel any physical pain anymore, or they feel the pain, but it doesn't stir up any like emotional stress in them. And that's because they're not trying to control it anymore, and because that perceiver, that experiencer, that sense of I am in control, that sense of them looking out into the world, being separate from the world, is completely dissolved. That's why they're able to not react to that stimuli, right? And here, even that baseline like positive emotion, like universal love or God consciousness, even that disappears. So it's like a complete emptiness, and people say that here, that although they don't feel any emotion at all, there's the highest degree of happiness. And then some, the thing is that like, if you go that high up to like location 4 and beyond, it may be very difficult to function in the world. Like, for example, if you're a CEO or an entrepreneur, it may be difficult to get anything done at all. And like, maybe that's why a lot of like advanced meditators and whatnot, when they become that advanced, they don't want to remain as a householder in family life anymore. They don't want to do things like, go out, watch movies, or start a family, or start a career. Like, none of that. That's that ordinary like societal activity. Even like, like fighting for social issues, even that stuff like disappears. It's just, I just want to like go, renounce the world and like meditate, maybe in a monastery, or like even in the forest, or if they're like like in ascetics of ancient times. Okay, so that was my somewhat brief overview of the 4 PNSE states. Do you guys have any thoughts on them? I know Ne Myojo, he just logged on before, and he's been meditating quite a lot lately. So, and we're him and I are both Buddhists, so I think Ne, why don't you start off the discussion on these 4 states? What do you think of this? Do you feel like you've experienced any of these qualities in your practice?
Yes, of course. I because these are the scientist research, right? What I have been experienced myself is quite can be related, But then I see those location 1, 2, 3, 4. Not all the facts didn't in line with my experience. There's just that, yeah. Otherwise, it is totally fine. It's very good insight.
Sure, yeah, you raise a good point about like, when I first came across his study, the first thing I noticed that, hey, wait a minute, in Buddhism, we also have 4 states of enlightenment, right? To not use like the language of the Buddha, to put in plain English, the 4 states are the stream winner, the stream enterer, which is like the first state of enlightenment, and then there's a once returner, which is more advanced, a non-returner, and then finally full enlightenment, right? What the Buddha called arahantship, right? And so, I noticed that some of these qualities may correspond to those 4 states that the Buddha talked about. And if that's the case, oh boy, man, that just gives so much more validity to his realization. However, there are also some things that are different. Like, for example, location 3, they feel a sense of universal compassion and love, unity with God. That's a very different way of explaining enlightenment. You see that experience in like traditions like Christianity or Sufism, right? So Sufism is like the esoteric branch of Islam. So like, unlike traditional Islam, where they don't really have those, from what I know at least, they don't really focus on these mystical states. The Sufi tradition focuses on things like this, these kinds of qualities, and which is why they have these like overwhelming joy and happiness and like universal compassion, right? The Buddha also talked about, spreading love and compassion to the world, right? There's a Pali term, Pali being the language of the Buddha, Pali term called Metta. Metta can be translated as goodwill or unconditional love. So that's kind of what that location 3 is like. And reason why I say location 3 being so peculiar is because like it doesn't really align with the description of the non-returner state, which corresponds to Buddhism's 3rd state of enlightenment. So there's quite a number of idiosyncrasies here, but yeah, it's very interesting to compare this versus the spiritual traditions of the world in order to give them validity and to encourage people to start practicing it. This stuff is legit. It's not just like fairy tales or like some sort of intellectual philosophy. This is validated by neuroscience. Enlightenment is real, and unless we practice to achieve these altered states, trying to go out and solve social issues in the world, we're only going to make things worse. So yeah.
These are the you mean these are the common ground that general people, most of the people can find.
Right.
All around the world.
Yeah, exactly. Like, like people want to, okay, I want to do good in the world, so I'll get into politics, but then they're not secretly, but just unknowingly, like once they unwind from those daily activities, they realize that they're so stressed, they're an emotional mess, and they have a lot of personal, like, psychological issues, and they may feel that, oh, it's not that important, like, these people need me, like these people are oppressed or marginalized or whatever, or like maybe let's say you're an environmentalist, like, oh, the environment is in danger, we need to save the planet, but then we do that, oh, so I'm gonna save the world first, and then and then later when I have time, I'm gonna do like maybe a little bit of meditation per day. And it's like our priorities are like upside down, but then I also think the right way to look at it is we need to create a culture in which these two things, spiritual practice and achieving these altered states and going out and being an activist, are one and the same, not seeing this as either this or that, right? So yeah, thank you, Kuni.
Go on,
Yeah, and so what was I going to say? Oh yeah, here beyond location 4, I just want to go into this a little bit. What's interesting is that Dr. Martin also found that there's stages beyond location 4, believe it or not. So, if we were to say that location 4 is arahantship, the highest stage in Buddhism, what he found is that there's even stages beyond. Some of his participants, although like less than 1%, achieved states beyond location 4. So what he found, what's very interesting here, is that for participants that attain location 5 and beyond, so beyond location 4, there was a divergence in their experiences. So among those that achieve those very, very high stages beyond the 4 stages, there's 2 paths. And the first path is the path of freedom. So the path of freedom would be like, basically what it is them no longer having any interest in like worldly activities, like they don't want to start a business, they don't want to, look after their family, and they don't want to do all that stuff anymore. It's just a complete calm, like no emotion. That's why it's called the path of freedom. So that would be like what Buddhism advocates for, and what the Buddha taught is the best path for humanity. That ultimately, but then the Buddha, what's different in Buddhism is that Buddhism talks about reincarnation, right? The reason why we have to escape the world is because if we don't, we might reincarnate into lower, like actual physical states like hell, like being burned in like hellfire, and that would suck if you're in that for like billions of eons. That's a different discussion. Anyways, the point is that what's interesting about this study is that there are states beyond location 4, and one path you can take is the path of freedom. But here's the peculiar thing, and this is one of the things that makes his study stand out so much, is there are also participants who report actually after location 4, which has no emotion, a higher state where emotions actually come back. That's very peculiar, because we think that, in location 4, once you're enlightened, you no longer have any emotions. You don't have you no longer have any emotions, and so you're free of suffering. But then this higher stage, which is different from location 3, where they felt like unconditional love, this higher stage, location 5 and beyond, has more emotion. That's very strange. But then what I'm guessing is, he doesn't elaborate on this too much, but these emotions are more positive. And maybe that's why people in these stages may come back and want to change the world. But then even if they do change the world, like, you know, they are not affected by it. You know, they're not affected by all the stress and baggage that normal, unenlightened, like, you know, activists or politicians or whatnot are affected by. And this is what makes it so, so powerful. Yeah, and so what he said, also the very, very highest stage that he reported out of all his participants, location 9. So we we talked about the 4 basic stages, 1 to 4, but then I talked about location 5 and beyond, and then location 9, the highest stage. What they report, the statement that summarizes it is, it feels like it's just the universe looking out my eyes. But then the reason why, you know, states like that stand out is because when you get into those states, some participants reported, like, you know, they were doing this practice, like doing their meditation, and when they shifted to these states, they completely collapsed. You know, they went unconscious for like a few hours. I don't know how it's possible to, like, you know, come back and still have a functioning brain after that. You know, like if you don't get like circulation and oxygen. I don't know about that. You'd have to ask like Dr. Martin. But, you know, that's why he says, like, if you're seriously pursuing like location 5 and beyond, like, just be careful. Like, don't do it without supervision. You know, otherwise stuff like that can happen. Like, you could die. So, like, you know, that may be why, you know, in some traditions, they very advanced spiritual seekers or teachers, you know, they like some Indian yogis, they report like, this master, like, he on his deathbed, like he rather than dying like a normal person, he left the body, you know, and attained like full liberation, right? So maybe that's what it is. Like, you just, right, like maybe scientifically speaking, what that is that they practice so hard that their entire body chemistry changed to the point where, you know, they couldn't accommodate that new energy that they were experiencing. That new emotional baseline was so strong that their nervous system was just too, like, it's like, you know, up to this point, like, our evolution as Homo sapiens, like, we can't handle that yet. Like, our physical bodies are too weak to handle that level of consciousness. It could be like that. That's just a theory, but anyways. Yeah, so guys, that's basically it for his study. Do you have any thoughts on it? How about from, yeah, not only Nate, but also Night Raider and Tata? What do you guys think?
I'll let whoever goes first.
Sure. Do you want to go first? You can go first.
I feel like how can I say that? I used to pause that location 1 to 4 when I do meditation. Like, whenever I get close to someone and whenever I get mad, I mean, whenever I feel something wrong with me, I try to meditate, as you said. That's why I feel like I pause those 4 locations.
Wow.
But you know, I don't understand that location 5. I just try to, you know, I just try to how can I, my emotion not to depends on the things, something like that. Maybe
Right.
someone uh, angry or someone do that I don't like. I try not to, how could I say that?
React.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just wanna make my own freedom, not because of the external things, something like that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, so I think what's happening is that it seems like, you know, I don't know how much meditation experience you have personally, but a lot of seekers, like, when they meditate, they may report you know, these different changes that are associated with the 4 locations in meditation. But then once they get out of meditation and then they return to the real world and start interacting with people, they may get angry and whatnot. They lose that state. that they can easily maintain in meditation. So, you know, what this study was trying to do, this is another important point to mention, is that so Dr. Jeffrey Martin put his participants under a very rigorous, consistent regimen of meditation. I think like something like, I don't know how long he asked them, maybe like 6 or 7 hours per day for like 3 months. Yeah, like it was like, it was pretty long, and like it was pretty hardcore. Like he asked them to do it, but then the interesting thing about this study was that the participants could select from a wide variety of meditation methods, and then they were given the option to experiment. So it wasn't like, oh, he came up with a meditation system, or he took from some tradition like Buddhism and then gave it to them. No, like each participant could choose their own meditation method. Of course, he did give them like a time frame for like for them to experiment out of the methods he presented, and then see which one works best for them. And so each of them chose what worked best for them. Maybe that's why they like each of them experience like different locations, even though they even though they chose their own method that suits them. Some of them did not advance as much as they would have liked, you know. And so again, that may be our choice of method, maybe one reason why we're not able to maintain these locations in daily activity. So one issue that we can see, that if we're spiritual seekers, we have to be conscious of what method are we using and not just rely on any one. If there's something off about what we're practicing, even if we do experience some changes, then we need to examine why is that. You know, we really need to think about that, and maybe what other method can I use, can compensate for that, or maybe do I need to combine methods, right? And so that's a very important question to ask. And another thing, like I said, in this study, they were under an intense regimen for 3 months, like around 3 months, or like a very long period of time, many months. And so it does take at least that long. I'm saying around 3 months because that's what I remember. But what he said is that the important point Dr. Martin made was that in most systems, you know, when they say that enlightenment takes like many years, like at least, you know, the Buddha, you know, in the story of the Buddha, for example, it took 6 years for him to get enlightened. But then the past Buddhas before him, some of them only took like weeks or days to become enlightened, right? And so like there's many differences in that. But then in the story of the Buddha, you know, the official explanation was that, you know, it was because of his like past like bad karma that he did in past lives. And so like, you know, it took him longer because of that. He had to like pay the price and like go through like, you know, rigorous asceticism that wasn't getting him anywhere. Like for example, the Buddha, like in the official story, it says that like, you know, when he first started, he followed the path of extreme asceticism. So that was like, you know, eating like only 1 grain of rice per day. Like that's probably hyperbole. Like maybe he ate more than that, but still like he was like skin and bone, like by weeks into that practice. And so, you know, he eventually realized that, you know, like many years later that, you know, before the 6th year that like, oh yeah, this isn't getting me anywhere. And so, you know, he also, before that, he also experimented with like indulgence, like a relaxed lifestyle. That didn't do anything either, obviously. And that's like the story is that that's how he arrived at the middle path, and that's how he became enlightened. But that also shows the importance of proper practice and the method that suits us and also our physical bodies, right? In location 5 and beyond, we showed how if we don't take care of our bodies like that, if we're too intense in our practice without supervision, you know, we could collapse, right? Like what if you're meditating and all of a sudden you become unconscious and you collapse for over an hour, and then there's nobody around you, nobody to like wake you up or rush you to the hospital. You're going to be brain dead, right? That would suck. I mean, of course you attain peace and liberation, but hell, like what if you still want to do things in the world, right? Like, right, again, that's why like these questions and these values that we come to ask ourselves, why are we seeking? And what cautions do we need to take in order to attain the state that we want to attain?
Can I say something about all
Yeah,
of
sure.
this?
Go ahead.
As you know, I told you before that I used to be an empath, and all this meditation and all these locations you're talking about, they're very similar to what I went through when I was meditating through being an empath and feeling energy around me and things like that. And I reached what you're saying there, like a location 5 area when I meditated a lot, and I harnessed all of my body's energy, and I met somebody who was some kind of a spiritual person. Never got to speak to the person because before I could say anything, I passed out, and the next day I woke up the next day and everyone was quite worried about me. So yeah, it's quite similar to what we're talking about right here.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Again, like, it's really great that you have you had a natural affinity to experience energy and whatnot. A lot of seekers struggle with that, even to be more finely tuned and aware when they're meditating. That's an important quality to develop as a spiritual seeker, but that comes with practice and insight and contemplating over why you're experiencing the things you're experiencing, why you're suffering. Another point that you mentioned, right? When you passed out, just to ask you, when you passed out, were you practicing or meditating, or were you just talking with the guy?
I was searching for places. I was trying to reach out to different areas within my meditation, and I was told by one of my friends who was also an empath. He told me about his experiences, and I wanted to reach out and try and find something new to explain to him. And and then I followed his steps, and but the one step I didn't take was the protection beforehand.
Right.
And that's why I passed out. If I did the protection, I would have been able to stay in that area for longer, but I wasn't able to do that because of I didn't follow the steps properly that he told me. So yeah, it was quite a bad situation.
Yeah. Wow. Again, this is why having a friend like that, a friend who's also an empath, or a friend who's all in the same tradition as you are, very, very important. Even if you don't have a spiritual guru. Another very important is that you also have to be careful which spiritual teacher you follow, because they may force things on you that you're not ready for. And so even though yes, you do have to develop perseverance and determination as a seeker, again, you know your own body best, or you know your own limitations. The job of a good spiritual teacher is to challenge you and challenge your ego and challenge your ignorance, but at the same time not to push you to the point of exhaustion or even death in dangerous situations. All right. Yeah. So that is basically it for the spiritual research part of this talk. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay, so now we're going to be moving on to personality types. Okay, so here I have the an MBTI site called 16 Personalities. I know that's how you've taken the personality test. I took it a long time ago in high school. Yeah. For the rest of you, Nate and Night Raider, have you guys taken any personality tests like this?
Yes, I've done this exact one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just to give an overview, for the MBTI system, you guys may know that each personality type has 4 different cognitive functions, and I don't remember how many cognitive functions there are in total. There's more than 4. By 4, I mean that each personality has like a different arrangement out of like however many different personality functions there are, and that's what informs their type. But here's the thing, like when looking at these type descriptions, like for example, like in the MBTI system, there's a diversion between thinkers and feelers, right? So you may look at that and say like, oh, they're a feeler, and so therefore like they can't think logically or whatnot, right? And then feelers may look at thinkers and say, oh, you got let's say like an INTJ or whatnot, like as your personality type. Oh, like you can't empathize with other people, like like it's a very narrow, myopic way of looking at the personality test, and it's just flat out like not correct, right? What we have to look at is the different personality functions of the types. Yeah. For me, I'm just going to use an example of my own personality type because I'm familiar with my cognitive functions. But, if you guys have different personality types, like after this, I would like to dive into your own personality profiles and see how your functions influence the way you think. And maybe we can do some like apply this to some examples of real world social issues and maybe see like, because of our different personality types, how does that shape the way we solve these issues? And we can also tie that back into the discussion of, okay, now how does this tie into the different locations that Dr. Martin discovered? Okay, so okay, I'm gonna dive into my personality type first. It is the INFP-T. Oh, so the T and the A at the end. So T stands for turbulent, which is basically like turbulent or people are more neurotic than like like assertive types. Assertive types are more like laid back, more confident. That's the right word. But at least when I took it, I was a INFP type. But so here, these are just like more general descriptions. Here, there's like strengths and weaknesses. This overly idealistic somewhere. Okay. Sorry, this one doesn't have the personality type functions. But basically, yeah. Do you guys have like a smartphone or whatnot nearby? What are you using to log on to this Zoom call?
What you mean?
Are you guys on your computers?
Yes, I'm on my computer.
Okay. So whatever you're on, here's what I want you to do. If you already know your personality type, go up and go ahead and look up like right now, like just maybe like pull out, open your browser or something. Look up the 4 cognitive functions of your type. Yeah. So let's do that to make this more interactive, right? So right now, I want you guys to take a second, like open a browser window. Yeah. So open your browser and look up your 4 different cognitive functions in the MBTI system, and then type them in the chat. If you already know them, you can just type them right now.
I'm just going to take the test again, just to make sure that it's the same one.
Sure. Okay. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to pull up. Okay, I have a video. Okay, can you guys hear that?
Sort of.
Can you guys hear that? Sorry, come again? Sorry, I didn't hear you there. But can you hear the YouTube video when I played it?
It's a little quiet.
Okay. Maybe volume.
I can hear it better now.
No. No cognitive functions here. Oh, here you go. Sounds good. Skip here. See again.
Hey, Austin. I
Yeah.
can hear
Sorry.
error.
Huh?
I can hear error.
Oh, you can't?
Oh, yeah, me too. I can hear the voice.
Okay, this is really weird. I've had this issue for like the past sessions we did.
And I hear a very buzzing voice, zzz, like that.
Okay. I have no idea where the buzzing voice is coming from, so we're just gonna have to bear with it.
There's
No.
someone's microphone that's just disconnecting a little bit.
Oh. I think it's good now. There's a car outside. Okay. Oh, share computer sound. Okay. Wait, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Wait, let me know if you can hear the video now.
You took the Myers-Briggs Personality Indicator, and I'm here to talk with you a little bit about that and the results of that for you, and try to help you get a better idea how important it can be. Now, I know you guys took it because you had to, and that's great. But you can learn some wonderful things from the results of the Myers-Briggs, and again, that's why I'm here. Now, I've been doing this roughly since 1985. I've been here at Eastern since 1985, so the only reason I tell you that is not to talk about myself, but you need to understand that what I'm telling you is the truth. I'm not going to give you any theory. I'm going to talk with you about what works, and I've done this so many times that I've had a chance to observe a lot. So hopefully this will be very helpful. So let me start off by giving you some idea of what personality is. I mean, why do this in the first place? Well, there's a couple reasons. My practice here at Eastern over the last 27 years has shown me that conservatively, about 70% of all the workers in the world end up going through their life hating what they do for a living. You may be coming from that environment. Your parents, your guardians, whatever your situation is, might be experiencing that. They may be experiencing a reality where they have to go to work every day and they don't like what they do. Now, there's honor in that. People do that. They do that all their lives, but it could be better. Some of us go to work every day and we end up loving what we do. Most of us who are in that situation did not have the benefit of the things you guys have already done, the stuff that you're about to learn. So that's another reason why I want you to understand what we're talking about here.
Okay, so that's just an intro. I'm gonna skip to his explanation.
Introversion. There they are. How are you psychologically energized? How do you get energized physically? It's either going to be from extroverted behaviors or introverted behaviors. We'll give you more detail about that in a couple minutes. Next level is how you become informed, how are you made aware of everything that's going on around you every millisecond of your life. It's either going to be through sensing behaviors or intuitive behaviors. Sensing, intuition. You are literally seeing the world through one of these two lenses. You can't do both at the same time on any of these levels, but you will do both eventually, all 8 eventually. So we've got sensing, taking in awareness with our senses, taking in an awareness with the 6th sense of intuition. The 3rd level of behavior is decision making. You could say that you're going to be making a decision at some point based upon awareness you got either as a sensor or as an intuit. You're going to make decisions with thinking, what we call thinking behaviors, and with what we call feeling behaviors. There's the feeling behavior. I have an affinity for feeling. We'll talk about that in a second. Again, you're going to be using these decision-making modes of thinking and feeling based upon the awareness that you've gleaned from sensing and intuition. The last tug of war is how you will set a lifestyle choice up for yourself, how you prefer to get things done with judging behaviors or perceiving behaviors. Judging and perceiving. Again, you're going to use both with an instinctive preference for one over the other. And I want to make sure you catch that. Even though, again, you're using all these behaviors, extraversion, introversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, my favorite feeling, judging, and perceiving, you're using all 8. You'll instinctively prefer one of every 2 on each of the 4 levels. And let's be clear about this.
Okay, so all right, there you go. Okay, you guys can hear me now?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so maybe earlier you had time to look up your own MBTI type. You guys are watching the video, but I mean, for those of you who already know your type, were you able to find the 4 cognitive functions associated with your type?
I'm just finishing the quiz right now.
Okay, cool. Let's see. All right, so for me, I'll just go over my type first because I'm familiar with this. So I'm an INFP, right? So that would be I for introversion, N for intuition, F for feeling, and P for perceiving. So completely on the right-hand side here. But so right, in terms of what he says about like extroversion versus introversion, right, where you get your energy, in my MBTI typology profile, my leading cognitive function is called introverted feeling. So, you know, like it's not like this function is called introverted feeling, but it's not really what you know, people think that like if you're not familiar with the MBTI system, you may think that that just refers to like emotion. So like, you know, where like INFPs are very like you know, emotional, sentimental types. Although to some extent that is true, that's not really what the cognitive function means. So FI, it's called FI or introverted feeling. So that would be, you know, what that is, you know, how we define our inner values. So FI, even though it's a feeling, it's called introverted feeling, it is very much a judgmental function, right? So INFPs, like they're, you know, they're known for being very true to their values. They value authenticity, and so again, maybe that's why, like, you know, maybe that's why it's very easy for me to be passionate about human ideals and coming up with a vision like this. You know, that may be because of, you know, our different personality types and our different strengths, right? But then there is both a strength to that function and a weakness to that function. You'll notice that in every personality type out of the 16 types, including your own type. So in terms of introverted feeling, what that's useful for is when you combine that with my secondary function, the secondary function of the INFP, which is extroverted intuition. So extroverted intuition is also known as exploration. You could call this exploration, and you could call introverted intuition as authenticity. That's just an easy way to remember it. Earlier, before this video, I showed you guys like a podcast. It was by Joel Mark Witt and Antonia Dodge. If you look up their podcast, Personality Hacker, that's how they like define my cognitive functions. But basically, just using my type as an example, FI and NE, introverted feeling and extroverted intuition, they work together in that, you know, for INFPs, we have an innate sense of, you know, existential values, an innate sense of right and wrong. And then when we interact with the world, we take ideas from our external environment and see how they can be used to express our inner values. So unlike ENFPs, right, our extroverted counterparts, what they do is they don't go, their function stack is not FI-NE, it's the reverse, it's NE-FI. So for them, what they do is they look at the external environment and then form their values. For us, is we already know what our values are, and then we use our external environment to either reinforce our beliefs or to express our beliefs in the world, right? So it's very different. So this is how, my point is that this is how extroversion and introversion differs. It's not that like, oh, if you're an extrovert, then you're a people person, or if you're an introvert, that you don't like to socialize. Like that the MBTI system goes much deeper than that, right? And then, okay, so to go back to the example of the INFP, our weakness is our tertiary function. So our tertiary, so like our third function in the in the stack of the 4 functions is called introverted sensing, right? So even though I'm an INFP, no sensing, like so-called, there's no sensing category here. We do have a sensing function, but then it comes as our weakness, right? Because it's tied into our FI, our introverted feeling, our authenticity, so-called authenticity function. What that is, you know, like as INFPs, like whenever we're depressed, we start to get into this mental loop of we remember things we did. Like, for example, like you remember an embarrassing moment in your life, right? And then you feel like, oh, like I wasn't true to myself, or like, you know, I'm a disappointment, I'm a failure. Oh, I could have done this differently, you know, like you start to beat yourself up, and that's because it's that FI-SI loop for INFPs. SI is like introverted sensing, right? So introverted sensing, how I learned it is like, it's kind of like memory. It's like personal memory, right? Like self-related memories, right? So when we go back to, again, like Dr. Martin's study, like self-related thoughts, that's kind of that like excruciating loop of like, you know, you beat yourself up, or you don't live up to your own perceived like self-image, right? And then, you know, that also ties into our other weak function, which is extroverted thinking. So extroverted thinking would be like managing daily tasks and like being efficient, you know, being structured and like organized, you know, like it's like, so because we're stuck in this loop, when we go out and function in the world, we don't operate at maximum efficiency. So, you know, again, to sum this all up, I was just using my personality type to show how, because of our strengths, we also have different weaknesses, and then it's up to us to use our strengths to, you know, overcome those weaknesses in whatever way we can. Okay, so I've given you guys a bit more time. Do you guys have a general idea, even without looking or taking the test or whatever? Do you guys have a general idea of where you might sit in terms of these 8 categories? What personality type do you think you are? Anyone?
It's kind of hard to pinpoint right now. I just finished that quiz right there, and
Sure.
trying to work out where I would sit. I think roughly I would be in the thinking and feeling category.
Sure. Thinking.
Maybe judging as well.
Thinking and feeling.
Thinking, feeling, judging. I think those three main ones I would probably pick.
I see. Yeah, I think in some respects, like we may have a mix of like categories from different sides. However, like he did mention earlier that, for example, like with each of our personality types, for example, take like thinking versus feeling. We can either be a feeling type or a thinking type, but according to the MBTI system, we can't be both. So, you know, again, that may be a limitation of the system, but that's not because we're not capable of thinking and feeling at the same time. You know, we are complex human beings, you know, but the reason why the MBTI classifies the different types that way is because each type has a stack of cognitive functions. That's what I wanted to emphasize earlier, and that's why I told you guys to like, okay, hey, like if you know your personality type or have an idea of it, like look up your cognitive function stack, right? So I think like, you know, after this talk today, like you can go home and take some time to like really like I think the 16 personalities website is a good place to start. As Night Raider was doing, just take the quiz, and whatever personality type you get, just look up on the search on the internet. Like let's say you're an INTJ or an INTP or whatever, right? They search up your personality type and say, okay, for example, INTP like cognitive function stack, and then you'll get like whatever like TI, FE, whatever function stack you have. It's different for each type. So yeah, I don't want to say this is an assignment, but yeah, just like I highly recommend, you know, like for future discussions as well, please go out and really study your personality type in further detail. So yeah, let me see. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, at that time, we talked for a bit. You said you took the MBTI test. Can you tell us what personality type you got?
Me.
Oh, sorry. That.
Yeah, he's me. Yeah. Well, my personality type that I got was protagonist.
Protagonist. Sorry, Night Raider.
Yeah, protagonist. That's the one I got.
Okay, ENFJ. Cool. Okay, you can go first as well. That's fine. Let's see. Did you find your cognitive function stack? Night Raider?
Is that the percentages that I am seeing?
Yeah, so for the 16 personalities site, they go by percentages, but a common criticism of this site is that it doesn't go into cognitive function. So that's an entirely different thing. This website doesn't really cover that. So if you don't mind, maybe take a moment to like just look that up, open like a new tab in your browser and say first, so if you're an ENFJ, you can type up, search up ENFJ cognitive function stack and you'll find it.
Oh, so I'm an EFJ A.
Okay, cool. Yeah. The A for, if you're looking up cognitive functions, the function stack, the A and the T doesn't really matter too much. If you search up like ENFJ cognitive function stack, you should find it. So basically, like to get an idea of what these functions are, so you have right, extraversion, introversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, and then what, judging, perceiving. So out of these 8 categories, there are even further subcategories, right? So like I remember what I said, like for example, introverted feeling. So that would be categorized as FI, right? And then extroverted intuition will be NE, right? So there's these like official abbreviations. That's what I wanted you guys to look up. Like open up a separate tab on your own and then see like, okay, what is my cognitive function stack? Because the order of the functions affects how you actually address, how you perceive the world, and then what are your strengths and your limitations come from that order of the function stack. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. How about, let's see, anyone else? Nate?
I'm taking the quiz.
Okay.
I might need some.
Okay, sure. That's how about you? Do you know your personality type?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing with us, like what you've learned?
Yeah, like I shared you, is INFJ, but this is
Sure.
some kind of facts that I'm not agree with the mention.
Let's see. Can you maybe? Well, what do you not agree with?
No. I just wondered that are there any other type of personality between extrovert and introvert?
I see. Yeah, that's a very common question. There's a term called ambivert. So ambivert is basically like, it's a very general term. That's how you want to mute yourself for a minute. Sorry.
I couldn't hear. What did you say?
Sorry. I think where's that buzzing coming from?
I think it's our microphone.
Let me mute myself for a second. All right. It seems to be better now. Yeah, we're just gonna have to bear with that buzzing. I'm really sorry, guys. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so ambivert, right? So basically that term, what it means is, you're neither an extrovert or an introvert, but you're somewhere in between. But then socially, the way people use that term is like, oh, like you are quite sociable, at least to like a reasonable degree. Like you can have conversations and make friends and have fun with people. You do get energy from that, but yet at the same time, you do like your alone time. You do like introspecting and maybe doing activities like reading and whatnot, or maybe even like meditation falls into that like activity, right? So these are people who are more in the middle. But the thing is that like with the systems like the MBTI, they talk about strengths and weaknesses is the main takeaway that I want you guys to understand. Because with the MBTI system, that's why I emphasize again and again the cognitive function stack, which is not on this website. This website doesn't go into much detail on that. It's the descriptions that this website gives, you can almost see it as the way that society would, like society's perception of your personality type, which is why, like the time when you said that, I don't quite agree with this system. It's like, am I only an extrovert or am I only an introvert? Really? Like, people are complex, right? Like in certain areas, you may be more extroverted. You may derive more energy from your external environment or from other people. But in other areas of your life, you may want more alone time. That goes for whether you're an extrovert or an introvert or an ambivert. It doesn't matter. People are an assortment of these categories. But it's what the MBTI system does so well is it shows us not only our preferences, but also the order of our preferences, so that when we fall into negative thought patterns, or when we have certain weaknesses that we need to work on, we understand why that is, rather than it's like, oh, I just can't seem to do this. I can't. Like, for example, with me, like I still have a hard time like sticking to like a daily routine. Like maybe, for example, waking up at the same time or eating at the same time every day, that kind of discipline. And I'm still working on it, but it is kind of difficult for me, at least. One reason why that may be is because of my weakest function, right? Is extroverted thinking. You could call extroverted thinking like the efficiency function, or like that's what makes people like more organized and efficient, right? But then other personality types, they may lead with extroverted thinking, so they're very, very organized, very efficient. And that those types may be very suited for, let's say, like like the corporate world, right? Like the corporate world, or like the 9-to-5 routine where people have to follow like very strict deadlines, and they're very good at that. But then maybe in other areas, in terms of like more artistic fields, like they may not have as much success. But then that can be changed, and the way to change that is based on reflecting on your life experiences and finding what you're passionate about. And that's what the MBTI system is only a test of your innate disposition, or even a beginning. It's not a full determinant of your fate, or your full potential. It's also another very important point. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Det don't really help to think of further.
Your voice is it's a like your mic is real quiet, narrator.
My microphone's quiet.
Yeah. You turn up the volume there.
Yeah, I'll turn up the volume.
Okay, better. Yeah. All right. Anyone else want to comment? No one? Okay, okay. Moving on. Tata, I'm gonna mute you for a second. If you want to speak. Sorry, your mic is still on. So like, if you don't want to comment, I'm just gonna like mute you so that there's no interference. And then I'm gonna move on.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, better. Do you want to say something?
No, that's okay.
Okay, cool. Nate, how about you? Did you?
I have taken the quiz. It say it's like advocate INFJA.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Can you explain to me? Like
Cool.
what?
You and that are the same type. Cool. INFJA. Yeah, that's how when you took the test, were you in INFJA or T?
I didn't know about that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know one.
Yeah. I think you have to enter your email address when you take the test, so you can just like go over that again. But it'd be interesting to see if you guys are like, if one of you is an A and the other is a T. It'd be very interesting to see like how that affects your like day-to-day life. I'd love to hear about that, like maybe some other time. Yeah, you can just tell me about it like in person or whatnot. Yeah, that'd be very interesting to see. But yeah, for the advocate, I do know that between the INFP and the INFJ, what's interesting is that we have completely opposing cognitive functions. So for me, for INFPs, my personality type, our strongest function is introverted feeling, right? So introverted feeling is the introverted feeling is the authenticity function. So like our own intrinsic values. But then for the INFJ, for Nate and Theta, you guys lead with extroverted feeling. So extroverted feeling is another term for it is harmony. Right? I think it's harmony. Yeah. if you look on YouTube and look at Joel and Antonia's podcast on the INFJ video, I could be wrong, but from what I remember, extroverted feeling is called another name for it is harmony. So basically, what that is you know, I think I think what your emphasis is, you know, you care about being in alignment with other people, or you know, about cooperation with the people around you. So like you're very good at making friends, right? But then I'm not so sure. I haven't read too much about your weaknesses. They could be, you know, the polar opposite of the INFP, because we have different personality functions. Like in all four areas, which is very interesting. Even though we're both introverted types, we're both intuitive types, and we're both feelers. We're both feeling types. That difference between the judging and the perceiving at the end, that makes our cognitive functions like totally opposite of one another. So again, that's also another thing to look out for when doing these types of personality tests. One little change in the classification, not just for the MBTI, but for any other system, like for, let's say, the Enneagram system, that could drastically change, like, you know, your strengths, your set of strengths and weaknesses, even though you're still under the same like rough umbrella, so to speak, like same rough category type. INFJs and INFPs, like, you know, we are very similar in terms of our values for like what is right and wrong in the world, but then the way we follow these, we express these values and try to manifest them in the world is completely different. For INFPs, we're a little bit more self-reinforcing. So like we may be like, INFPs are, my guess would be like, we're much harder to negotiate with. Like we believe what is right, and then no one else can change our mind if we really truly believe something. But then for INFJs, you know, like you believe in the same things that INFPs do, most likely, but then you go about it by, you know, through cooperation and harmony, trying to, you know, that's what I think, that's what for INFJs, that's what makes you guys, like a lot of INFJs pursue fields in like counseling and psychology, or like they become like therapists, because they're such great listeners. Even though they have those, you know, intrinsic values, they make sure to listen to the other side first, and then you know, try to reach common ground. And that is a very important quality to have as an activist when you're trying to tackle social issues. So again, like, you know, FI and FE each have their strengths and weaknesses in different areas, but it's up to us to, because we have different personality types, we make up for each other's strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Yeah. Nee and Deta. Do you guys have any comments?
Not from me.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I found out there is INFJ.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have a same personality with you.
Yeah.
Let me say.
Cool. Okay. So I think by now you guys have a pretty good idea of how these personality types work. Again, it's a lot. Starting points like the 16 personality website are quite limited. They'll give you a general idea of what your perception of the world is, but in order to truly understand yourself better, cognitive functions in their order are very, very important, and that's something you should really take the time to study on your own. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the last topic, which is heroism, and I'm very, very excited for this because, again, you know, in the West, especially, why this holds a very, very special place in my heart is ever since I remember, like, you know, when I was young, I used to like draw a lot. Right now, not so much. I haven't drawn anything in a long time. But I remember since I was like 4 years old, like the first thing I drew was like a very funny. My first drawing I think that I ever did was like a red Power Ranger, right? So I think, and why I bring that up is because, you know, even though, yes, I was brought up in a religious household and like Buddhism and whatnot, when I was young, you know, that's not really where my so-called like ideals at the time, my values, like even though they were dormant, I, as a 4-year-old, like of course, like I won't have any like intrinsic values. I'm just like having fun with my life. I think subconsciously, because, you know, like being raised in a Western culture, yeah, this ideal of the superhero was so ingrained into me. And, you know, I think that goes to show like how our culture shapes our identity and our sense of good and evil, and how we choose to tackle social issues. So, you know, from this idea of the hero in ancient you know, in ancient societies, like, you know, the Romans and the Greeks, they had their own heroes, you know, in terms of the gods. Like, you know, for the Greeks, it was, you know, like Zeus and Poseidon, and you know, and Aphrodite and whatnot. Like each of them, you know, they had their own tales, and then, you know, the gods would like you know, the gods would wage war against the humans and punish them, and there's all that all those tales that different societies and different periods of time have looked to for ideals and for a sense of hope, and to get a deeper understanding of reality and the difficulties that people face. They have their own heroes, but it's also their heroes. These classical ancient hero tales are in many ways different from the modern superheroes that we see nowadays. Like, for example, like the Avengers, right? Everyone knows the Avengers, or like Superman, Batman, and whatnot. Like all these figures, that is an evolution in time based on changes in modern culture, right? And I think a part of that is because, you know, in modern times, we have different day-to-day struggles that we have to deal with. Like, for example, take the example of Spider-Man, right? Like Spider-Man, you know, when he's not wearing the suit, he's just Peter Parker, right? And then so as a teenager, you know, you know, in some stories he's like a college-age student, you know, which is why he resonates so much with me. Like, you know, he struggles with making enough money, you know, to support his, you know, you know, Aunt May. You know, he doesn't have an uncle because he died and it was his fault, but that's another thing entirely. But anyways, like he has these struggles, like making enough money, paying the rent, you know, you know, dealing with dating and relationships, and because of his superhero identity, like he's not able to, you know, have time with the people he loves, right? And so that classic struggle that was embodied in these ancient tales, now all of a sudden in our modern era, they've changed, you know, they've changed according to the struggles that we've had to face in our daily lives. And the reason why that's so important is because if we look to these tales, the difference between ancient heroes and modern heroes, modern superheroes, is like the difference between, you know, ancient conceptions of spirituality, like the main religions of the world, like Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and modern movements, like let's say the New Age movement, or like, you know, this recent wave of scientific research into spirituality, and the differences that exist between them, between these two different times. And now, you know, with these superhero ideal, so to speak, in modern society, if we want to change, if we want to get people to come together regardless of their, you know, different political ideologies, they need heroes that they can identify with. Like with these modern heroes, they have modern day-to-day struggles. Like if you talk about, for example, let's say you're a Buddhist and you talk about the Buddha, right? Or you talk about Jesus Christ. If you're a religious follower, then yes, you may resonate with those heroes, right? Because you're into that belief system. But let's say if you go to a modern like atheist and you bring up these heroes, like you're sure like their achievements are great and whatnot, but then they can't relate to them, right? Because those heroes are seen as perfect, right? They don't have any human flaws. Like they're mentally perfect. They don't have any moral ambiguities and struggles that they don't have to deal with. They don't have day-to-day material struggles like relationships or paying the rent or whatnot, right? And so for contemporary social change, we need not necessarily a different ideal. We're not moving on to a different ideal and abandoning the old, but we have to take the old ideals of spirituality, right? And the context and the heroes that were depicted in these myths associated with the spiritual traditions, and we have to combine that with a new vision of heroism. And that, I believe, that is found in the modern superhero myth, right? And that was if you to get an idea of what human ideals is, this right here, this is it. Like this is the vision of human ideals, and the reason why how spiritual research and like how do superheroes relate to spirituality, like at first glance, like those are very, very different things, but this is why. Yeah, so I want to ask you guys right now, like I grew up in a Western culture, and then like I moved to Myanmar like for like middle school and high school, so like I was also exposed to both the Western and the Eastern culture and their respective ideals, but maybe you guys are different. I know like Nate and Theta, you guys are fully Burmese, so maybe you don't identify as much with these like superhero kind of myths. They didn't play as big of a role in your life. Maybe you identify with different heroes, but nowadays we have a very international culture. Like even in Myanmar, like superheroes are very, very popular now, more than they've ever been. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like this myth, this modern hero myth is important for social change? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
Do you mean the one who has the supernatural power?
Can I say something?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Like because you're talking about like past and present superhero, what's the difference and the difference between Western and Eastern? Yeah, I think there will be a difference, but what I want to say is that like it's all depend on like how the people around the world, their belief, their point of view, it all matters. And for my definition of hero, it might be something like the person like who can change the world, right? It might be my definition of hero. Like for example, it might be funny, yeah, like don't you think like Donald Trump is a hero? He changed the world, like he changed the world.
Right.
Something
like depending
that.
on
I just want to say that.
Sure, like depending on your political leaning. For anyone who's watching this, again, like we're not here to we may have our personal beliefs in politics and around like certain figures like
for example like Donald Trump. He can either be a villain or superhero, but he has the ability to change the whole world, like put it in a mess or whatever. Like
right.
That's my definition of like power, like something like that.
Sure.
Not need to be a politician, but everyone who can change the world in a good direction or a bad direction, he is a hero, superhero. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. You know, it's very easy to misconstrue this for those of you that are watching here. Okay, you can see this window. Okay, never mind. Okay, so for those of you who are watching, it's very easy to misconstrue this. Of course, we're not saying that people who commit like, you know, mass atrocities, like for example, like Adolf Hitler, we're not saying that they're a hero, obviously, but like, you know, based on our shared sense of morality for most human beings on this planet. However, you know, let's say if you're a neo-Nazi or whatever, Adolf Hitler might very well be your hero, even if, you know, even if they are morally like reprehensible, right? But from your point of view, like they are a hero, right? So what Nay said earlier about like, you know, a hero could be someone who has a major impact on the world for better or for worse. And that's a very unconventional way of defining heroism. And you know, there are some problems to that definition if we, you know, if we think like, oh, heroes is as long as we have a as long as we can change the world, then we're a hero. It's like, no, it's not. It's not like that. Obviously, it's not that simple. However, the point is that like people who have a massive impact for better or for worse may be heroes to different groups and villains to others. And that's a very important point, because if we want to go out and convince, you know, if we want to go out and convince these people who don't share our moral convictions, our moral values, then we need to take that into consideration and not, you know, not immediately try to tear down and, you know, invalidate their heroes and why they value them. We need to bring them in slowly and say like, hey, maybe like you're not seeing this perspective, or maybe you're not seeing how these people are suffering over here, and so maybe you don't see the flaws, or maybe the flaws that exist in their hero's way of thinking, right? So you can point these flaws very slowly, you know, little by little, rather than just like throwing it all onto them, like, oh, you're, you know, like you shouldn't follow this guy, or like, you know, along those lines. What I'm saying is like, you don't want to immediately like completely destroy and tear down their vision of heroism. You have to, it's like what the Buddha said, right? Like, yeah, of course, like along in the spiritual path, right, you need to have an insight into your own existential ignorance and your own suffering. But yet at the same time, there is also a passage in Buddhism where the Buddha says, so long as people do not find a higher source of happiness, they will always revert back to their negative beliefs and their negative behavior patterns. And that's why when we go out and try to convince these people, or try and put these people on a better path, people who have heroes who we deem to be morally questionable, we have to take that into account, and we have to give them a better vision of heroism. We cannot just destroy. We can't just criticize their heroes without replacing their idea of heroism, without replacing it with anything. This is a very important point to make. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
Not for me.
Sure. Do you want to comment, or?
No, I think everything's pretty straightforward.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Okay. In that case, I'll be moving on in terms of what I want to explain now is how this hero's narrative is constructed when, you know, when these like for example, when these superhero movies and TV shows are made, what's the thought process behind it? How do these directors come up with this assortment of character traits, this set of personal, you know, personal value, the personal values of these heroes and their day-to-day struggles? How do they come up with that? And how do they craft the story in such a way that people are inspired by the end of the movie, even though there are many struggles and emotional lows that these heroes face. What makes them so identifiable, and why do they resonate with the common person, the everyday person, right? So this is what I want to show you, and there's a very short video here called The Hero's Journey. And the hero's journey was something first created, the concept first created by Joseph Campbell.
Embedded deep in the human psyche.
Sorry, can you guys hear the video?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Lies the narrative of what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey. This is more than just a mere mythological narrative. This is a deep truth that applies to every human story. This is a journey about self-discovery, living a fully realized life, or as Campbell would simply state, following your bliss. The hero's journey was his all-embracing metaphor for the deep inner journey of transformation that heroes in every time and place seem to share. A path that leads them through great movements of separation, descent, ordeal, and return. It is going full circle from the ordinary world to the special world and back again. This same narrative spans across all cultures, eras, religions, and tales, including not only your favorite stories like Star Wars and Harry Potter, but within the lives of every human being on the planet. The journey stages may be avoided, repeated, or shifted depending upon the needs of the individual story. The hero's journey can be just as much as an inner voyage into the unconscious mind as it is an external adventure. There are a number of steps that a hero must go through for self-transformation. Typically, there are 12 steps that usually go in the following order. Step 1. The ordinary world. This is where we all start, in the ordinary world, where the hero is a lesser version of himself in the beginning, just like all of us. Most fall into the trap of society's doctrine and end up following the status quo like everybody else. We do what our family, friends, society tells us to do, which leads us into living a life that's not our own. But deep down, we know that there's more to life, that there's an exciting adventure waiting for us. In Star Wars, you see Luke Skywalker being bored to death as a farm boy before he tackles the universe, the special world, which is a metaphor for stepping into chaos, uncertainty, the unknown, or as Jung would call, the unconscious. Step 2. Call to adventure. The call to adventure signifies that destiny has summoned the hero. As we go about our lives, we will encounter multiple calls to adventure, opportunities to embark on a new quest which will change everything we thought we knew about ourselves and reality. Typically, this will involve delving deep into our fears or the unknown. We will be faced with a difficult challenge to let go of what we know. It's up to us whether or not we accept that call. Like in The Matrix, the call to adventure is when Neo gets the message to follow the white rabbit. Sadly, most people don't get past this stage. They live their life according to others, never really chasing their dreams because they rather play it safe and stay in the illusion of certainty. This often leads them to feel unfulfilled and stagnant. They never accepted that call to adventure. Step 3. Refusal of the call. The hero will almost always refuse the call, at least in the beginning, due to fears, insecurities, resistance, and the unwillingness to change. And this is totally understandable. I mean, it's scary facing our fears, right? In The Matrix, Morpheus calls Neo and tells him to cross the ledge, but Neo refuses and gets taken away by the agents. The hero's journey is just as much an inner voyage as an external adventure. Refusing the call to adventure in modern life many times refers to avoiding our issues, right? Our unconscious mind. This could be a fear that we haven't faced internally, or an opportunity we didn't take because it's too risky. So we don't do anything and wonder what could have been. Step 4. Meeting with the mentor. The hero encounters a mentor who gives them wisdom, insights, and guidance that will help them on their journey. In The Matrix, it was Morpheus who mentored Neo. In Star Wars, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke Skywalker. In Lord of the Rings, it was Gandalf to Frodo. Just remember that meeting a mentor doesn't necessarily have to happen physically, even though many times this does happen eventually as you progress through your hero's journey. People like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Elliot Holst, Robert Greene, Aubrey Marcus, Carl Jung, and Jordan Peterson, just to name a few, have all been amazing mentors to me, even though I haven't met any of them in my life. Yet they have helped me tremendously on my journey with their experiences, wisdom, and valuable insights. Step 5. Crossing the first threshold. This is when the hero goes from the ordinary world to the special world. This is a metaphor for going into the unconscious, into the unknown. This is where the adventure of self-discovery truly begins. This is also the point of no return. After the hero crosses the first threshold, life will never be the same. This is the stage where Neo takes the red pill and wakes up from the Matrix. Crossing the first threshold in your hero's journey may be receiving a piece of information that changes your perspective on life forever, or quitting your job and moving to another country. Step 6. Test allies, enemies. The hero learns the rules of the new world. Challenges, walls, conflicts arises. You meet new friends, have new experiences, but at the same time face more challenges. The most important function of this stage in this story is the testing of the hero to prepare them for the ordeals that lie ahead. This is when Morpheus teaches Neo the training simulation, or when Harry adjusts to life in Hogwarts. Step 7. Approach to the innermost cave. The innermost cave may represent many things in a hero's story, such as an actual location in which lies a terrible danger, or an inner conflict which up until now the hero hasn't faced yet. In many myths, the hero has to descend into hell to retrieve a loved one, or into a cave to fight a dragon and receive the treasure. The dragon in mythology represents everything you fear which guards the most precious treasure. This is a metaphor for life. It's when you break through the other side of what you fear most that bears the biggest rewards and growth. But this isn't easy by any means. Like when the Oracle tells Neo that Morpheus or he will die, and that Neo has the power to choose who. Or when the Green Goblin asks Spider-Man to join him, but Peter refuses. It is at this stage in the hero's journey which the hero has to make a very tough decision. Step 8. The ordeal. This is usually the biggest challenge a hero must face, such as a deep inner crisis or hitting rock bottom. Only through the form of death can the hero be reborn, experiencing a metaphorical resurrection that somehow grants him greater power or insight necessary in order to fulfill his destiny. This is the high point of the hero's story, and where everything he holds dear is put on the line. If he fails, he will either die, or life as he knows it will never be the same again. Step 9. The reward. After triumphing the ordeal in the innermost cave, the hero receives a reward. Whether it's a physical object, knowledge, or even love, the true all-healing elixir is the achievement of inner change. Neo blames himself for Morpheus being captured, so he decides to re-enter the Matrix to save him. Or in The Lion King, when Mufasa's ghost tells Simba he must return to the Pride Lands. In everyday life, the reward could be settling a conflict with a family member, or the shadow self, or even healing a trauma, which gives you a much better understanding of yourself, allowing you to live a much happier and fulfilled life. Step 10. The road back. After the hero gains the reward, we move into Act 3. The hero isn't out of the woods just yet. This stage marks the decision to return to the ordinary world. The hero realizes that the special world must eventually be left behind, and there are still dangers, temptations, and tests ahead. Before Neo can leave the Matrix, Agent Smith kills him. Simba returns to the Pride Lands and faces Scar. If the hero has not resolved the issue with the conquered villain, in real life this refers to the Shadow, it comes after him with a vengeance. In psychology, this refers to neurosis, bad habits, old addictions, and dark pasts coming back to haunt us, like an ex-girlfriend, for example, after we thought we were done with them forever. Step 11. Resurrection. During the resurrection, death and darkness are encountered one more time before being conquered for good. Danger is usually at the peak of the entire story, and the threat is to the entire world, not just the hero. The stakes are at their very highest. The hero uses all lessons learned on the journey and is transformed into a new being with new insights. This is my favorite part in The Matrix, when Trinity tells Neo that she loves him, so he must be the one. So then Neo revives and kills Agent Smith. This could represent an ego death, for example, which triggers an enlightening experience, or it could be going to the darkest depths of our psyche during a hardcore depression, hitting rock bottom, extracting that wisdom and transcending it all with that fire in the belly, which makes us fearless, that helps push us forward on our self-development. This is a critical point in the hero's journey where he or she realizes that they had the power within them the whole time. Step 12. Return with the elixir. Once the transformation is complete, the hero returns to the ordinary world with the elixir, a treasure or a new understanding. Returning with the elixir means the hero can now implement change in his daily life and use the lessons of the adventure to heal his wounds and help others in the ordinary world. This is important because unless something is brought back from the ordeal in the innermost cave, the hero is doomed to repeat the adventure until the lesson is learned, which many of us stay stuck in. It's like this painful karmic cycle that keeps hitting us time and time again, each time more painful than the last, until we finally learn our lesson. In life, the elixir can be a metaphor for growth, love, wisdom, freedom, or knowledge, which we can use to help others, even if it's just our close friends and family. The hero's journey isn't a linear path that you reach once and finish forever. It is a cyclic journey in personal transformation, where you constantly face challenges and resistance, i.e. the shadow, which helps you constantly grow and gain wisdom. But this isn't easy. Facing yourself is the most terrifying and challenging thing you will ever do in life. But it's the only way to truly transform in a meaningful, positive way, which will make a huge impact in others' lives. And this all starts with accepting that call to adventure, facing your fears, walking your path to self-discovery, and living your truth. So what are you waiting for? Adventure awaits. What's up?
Let's see. Last. Yeah, what a great quote at the end. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that is basically the entire hero's journey, and this is what, you know, the best directors and storytellers of superhero stories, this is what they use. The what is it, like 12 stages that he mentioned to craft their characters. And so yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, it's inspiring.
Sure. Think I'm thinking of a question to pose. You know, like one thing that you can notice with the hero's journey is that, even let's say, to take the example of Buddhism, right? In the Buddhist journey, where he went to for him, like towards the end, right before he attained enlightenment. Remember, I told you guys, like, he went through a period of asceticism where he faced his, like, you know, he was at his lowest point, right? And then he almost abandoned all hope for enlightenment, right? And then towards the end, he had to really fight for his goal. And then later he came back with the jewel, figuratively speaking, right? And then in the Buddhist story, you know, he was very reluctant to come back and teach the world because he thought that, you know, ordinary people would not understand a message like his because it was so profound. But then there's an incentive for these heroes to return and help others, you know, and even that is like a constant struggle. And we see that in these stories, you know, for the Buddhist story, right? Like even later in his life, that struggle never really ended, right? He said that, you know, when he, for example, when he first let, you know, female nuns into his order, he said that, you know, because he did that, you know, his true teachings would only last another 500 years instead of the usual 1,000 years. You know, that may have been, you know, due to the, you know, sexist, like, gender norms of his time. Maybe, you know, like, I wouldn't say for certain, maybe he was influenced by that, or maybe there are other, you know, cosmic factors that he was thinking about. Like, we don't know, right? But that's just an example, is that even if we attain that goal, we may always come face to face with new struggles, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, to pose a question to you guys, I think that, you know, even before you came on this, you know, came to this session, you may have had a goal, like a life goal that you've been pursuing. And in terms of that goal, I want you to think of that goal for a second. And where would you guys say, like, out of these, like, what, 12 stages in the hero's journey, where do you guys think you're right now at the moment? Anyone?
I'm trying to think about it.
I guess it's hard to say because I don't remember. I just know that there's a 12 steps, right? I don't know exactly what step one. Each step is for.
Yeah, so, like, each step, it's like in a progressive order, right? Like, for example, the first step was the hero, what is it, like, the hero receives the calling, and then the next one is their they're reluctant to take on the call, they don't want to accept it, they don't want to take the journey, but then something motivates them to do it. And then so like there's different steps like that, right? So, you know, what I was thinking was that for you guys, like like maybe if you use the hero's journey as an analogy for your life, like where are you at right now? Like do you feel like you have enough motivation to pursue your purpose? Do you feel that you're that confident right now, or maybe are you you know, are you still reluctant, or have you already achieved what you want to achieve? And maybe like, you know, from the hero's journey, like, are you back in the ordinary world now, and are you spreading your message? You know, like where are you guys? Maybe.
I think I am still being mentored.
Mentored. Okay, cool. I'm guessing this is from the spiritual teacher you talked about, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That is also a very important phase, right? Because, you know, maybe down the line, maybe this mentor you're currently with is right for you, or maybe not. You know, this video is pretty short, didn't go into much detail, but if oftentimes these heroes, you know, seek the tutelage of many different mentors, and each of these mentors, what makes for great storytelling is how these different mentors have different values that they try to instill upon their student. And so that's what makes the, you know, ultimate decision that the hero has to make in order to attain his or her goal so difficult. Is not only does he have personal dilemmas that he's struggling with, but also the having to decide between the values instilled upon him by his mentors and by society at large. Sorry, I say his consciously, it could be his or her, like the values, you know, instilled upon them by their mentors or by society, right? They have to choose between that, and whatever decision they make, that will have very strong repercussions, very strong repercussions for, you know, like, you know, how their message is received in the world. Are they, you know, are they praised for being a hero, like in the end, or, you know, are they made out to be a villain? And that is, you know, this is why, like, if you're going to be a hero like that, you know, it's not for everybody, obviously. Like, if you still care about, if a part of you still cares about how you're perceived by others, and if you're emotionally weighed down by that, then you're not. Part of being a hero is you can't prioritize that fear above, you know, doing the most good for others, no matter how you're perceived in the end. That's a choice you'll have to make, right? Let me see. It's almost it's almost 8, so I'll cut it short. Dark Knight ending. I want to show you this here. This is, yeah, one of the best clips I've seen in a movie. This is pretty short. Yeah, I want to show you. So basically, The Dark Knight is like one of the best superhero films of all time, directed by Christopher Nolan. And, you know, basically in this film, you know, after what happens after he faces the villain, Batman, you know, Batman chooses to take on the role of the villain, not necessarily by doing evil, but so that, you know, you know, so that the I don't want to say too much about the plot without spoiling it, so that to give people a sense of hope, to show people, to not reveal to the citizens of Gotham, the city he's trying to protect, the truth about, you know, certain figures that they admire, who are, you know, who turn out to be corrupt by the end of the film, as you'll see. Here, I mean, like, I think I can give this away because it's pretty obvious. Harvey Dent, right? You'll see that Harvey Dent is he's a politician. I think he's a district attorney of Gotham, right? He's presented to the people as a figure of hope, someone that they can, someone that they can look to, like Batman. But then he ends up becoming evil, right? Because of that struggle. He went through the hero's journey. He faced that struggle, but he couldn't make it to the other side a better person. His faith in humanity was lost, whereas Batman kept it. But then Batman, because he kept that conviction in people's capacity for good, he had to pay the ultimate price of being seen as a villain, even though he wasn't the real villain. He didn't do anything wrong.
Dad, is he okay?
How's the volume, by the way?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
You don't have to thank me.
Yes, I do. The Joker won. Harvey's prosecution, everything you fought for. I'm done. Whatever chance you gave us of fixing our city dies with Harvey's reputation. We bet it all on him. The Joker took the best of us and tore him down. People will lose hope.
They won't. They must never know what he did.
5 dead. 2 of them cops. You can't sweep that off.
But the Joker cannot win. Gotham needs its true hero. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I can do those things because I'm not a hero. Not like Dent. I killed those people. That's what I can be.
No, you can't. You're not.
I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. Call it in.
A hero. Not the hero we deserved, but the hero we needed. Nothing less than a knight. Shining.
They'll hunt you.
You'll hunt me. You'll condemn me. Set the dogs on me. Because that's what needs to happen. Because sometimes truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
Why is he running, Dad?
Because we have to chase him.
Okay, we're going in. Go, go,
He didn't do anything wrong.
Because he's the hero Gotham deserves. But not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt him. Because he can take it. Because he's not a hero. He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. A dark knight.
yeah, so yeah, one of my favorite movies of all time. And this ending never fails to make me tear up just watching it. But yeah, anyway, the greater point that I want to make with this is that, you know, like in pursuing this hero's journey, you know, for us it may be spirituality, and for you guys maybe spirituality, and that's great. But you know, if not, it could be your career or your family, whatever that is. Like you, hero's journey, the way I see it, is an archetype, right? Joseph Campbell created it, he envisioned it as these steps, but he could only do so because it's buried beneath, within, you know, our brain, like our collective unconscious, right? And the way we've evolved as human beings over these hundreds of years that we've existed as a species, right? So we all innately know to pursue the hero's journey, and we want to, but then we may face these challenges in our lives, right? These inner struggles, and the choices we make may have severe consequences for our lives. Some we may make mistakes along that journey, and some we can't take back, no matter what. We may make terrible mistakes, like for example, the Batman, right? You know, even though he didn't do anything wrong, the choice that he made caused him to be, you know, shunned by society for years, right? People saw him as a villain, right? But then those kinds of choices may also manifest in our lives, right? There may be people, like for example, in this movie, Batman came face to face with the Joker. You know, we may have people like that who they see our success and, you know, they feel like a failure. So in order to not, you know, in order to not feel like that, they want to spread their pain and hatred on the world. And so they want other people to suffer like they have, right? And so people who are actively trying to sabotage you, you know, they may come after you, or they may come after the people you love, right? But in either case, my point is that we as spiritual seekers, as activists, or as ordinary people, may struggle in the hero's journey, and ultimately we may even fail. But I hope that, you know, you guys have the resilience and the inspiration within yourself, a vision within yourself, a source of happiness within yourself that motivates you to make that kind of noble choice, like Batman did at the end of this film, to be like him. You know, how can we express that in our lives, whether it's the most ordinary, like day-to-day tasks that we're doing, or even if it's like a large world-changing vision, whatever it is. You know, we can live like superheroes, right? In that sense, we don't have to wear costumes. We don't have to do dangerous things. We don't have to hunt down criminals, right? And then the spiritual practice and the spiritual path is our way of keeping our inner life in check, and to make sure that we do have that unconditional sense of fulfillment, whatever happens in our external life. Whoever comes after us, whoever tries to sabotage our happiness. Right? And in doing so, we won't spread our hatred and our fear onto the world. Yeah. Any comments on that? Anyone?
No, I don't think so.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I mean, like, if you guys want to, you know, maybe I think in the future, like what we could do is maybe not on Saturdays at this time, but whenever we're all free, like we can do, I'll host like a watch party, you know, like we can, you know, we can vote on like what superhero films or any other film that relates to this, like what kind of hero's journey related film do we want to watch? We vote on that, and then we host a watch party. That's a good idea. Yeah. So just to throw that out there, I'll probably be doing that sometime. If you're not in it, if you guys aren't in my group already, I have 2 Facebook groups. One is called Spiritual Awakening, Social Change and Self-Help. Yeah, that's one. And then the other one is INFP Spirituality. That's mostly for INFPs. Yeah, so you can join either one. But I'd recommend, if you're not an INFP, just join the Spiritual Awakening, Social Change and Self-Help group. So you can look under my Facebook, the Human Ideals Facebook page, and you'll see our 2 Facebook groups. Just join there. And lastly, before we sign off, I just wanted to show you guys a small project that I've been working on that relates to this, to these superhero films. So I know we're long past 8, and it's been a long time, but yeah, I just want to show you guys this. I'm not going to run through the whole thing, just take a brief glimpse of it. So this is an idea for a TV series that I've been working on, based on human ideals. It's you can call it like a young adult dramatic television series based on like the superhero narrative. But unlike like most superhero shows with costumes and powers, this one focuses less on that, the fantastical element, and more on the inner like emotional conflicts of the characters. So this is just like a vision of some of the sources of inspiration that I've drawn upon. These are the characters. So again, this is like this show is about like so there's these 4 young adults, and they're all in college, and they're all spiritual seekers, and each of them has a social issue that they're passionate about. You know, and they come together because they realize that although they're trying to change the world, they have these inner conflicts, and then the way that the world tries to change these issues, you know, doesn't resolve these dilemmas that they're facing, these emotional conflicts that they're facing, you know, due to their respective past trauma. And so they come together under a spiritual teacher who guides them. There's a lot of tension between him and the students, and among the students themselves, the 4 seekers here. And then they also come into conflict with, you know, again, like I said, the people who are trying to sabotage you in the hero's journey. This is like the villain, the group of villains, the antagonists. Yeah, so it's also like a political thriller type series, like a political drama. So there's a lot of like scenes of like protests and like, you know, courtroom battles and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool idea. At least I think it is. You know, I've been trying to, you know, during my undergrad here, I'm trying to take a screenwriting minor, and this is why. You know, I wrote this back in high school when I was applying for college. I wrote like a full-length pilot script for this show, and I hope, like, you know, if you guys are passionate about this, you know, if you think this is a good idea, or if you want to add something to it, I can definitely talk to you guys on the side, and we can work on this. We can work on this show together, you know, if you want, or maybe you guys want to take it in another direction. Like, you know, you can give me suggestions on that. That'd be great. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Any last thoughts from you guys? Final thoughts?
No, for me.
Sure. Nate, how about you?
It's a good enough. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Data? Still there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Anyways, I think that was long enough for today. Kept you guys past 8. It's been long, but I think the discussion was very productive. I think next time, you know, if you guys have like, I told you guys the topic beforehand, so maybe if you have any questions around it before we hold our next session, our session next week, like you can come with your own questions and your own ideas. That would make for a more interactive discussion. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys. So thank you so much for coming. And yeah, we'll be continuing this next week with a different topic at the same time. Again, for those of you watching, this spiritual activism course takes place every Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Anyways, yep. Thank you guys so much for attending, and that is it for today's session.
Okay, see you. Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, sure. Bye. I read.